Happy Tuesday, all you minties! Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today as I do an overview of these collected editions coming out from Marvel Comics this week. So, let's get started! And welcome back, everybody. Before getting started, a huge thank you to David Gabriel and the fine folks in Marvel for sending us advance copies of these books. All of these books are due out in the direct market and book market on December 13th. So, what we got here are 10 books. On top of this, we also have War of the Bounty Hunters, we have the Spider-Man Wedding Album Gallery Edition, we have Ven Omnibus by Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman, and the Thing Omnibus. Now, my Thing Omnibus overview will be out tomorrow, which would be Wednesday. But today, December 13th, my dad's birthday, so what better way to celebrate my dad's birthday than to talk about some of these collected editions coming out? Yay! Feliz cumpleaños, papi. Alright, let's go ahead and start, because we got a lot to talk about. So today, we're going to be starting with the Obi-Wan Kenobi story. And then we will move on to the rest of the trades, then the epics, and then the Marvel Masterworks. As always, I put timestamps in the description of the video so you can jump around in case you're only interested in a couple titles, or in case you don't want any spoilers going in. Smash that like button! Yes! I said it. Thank you. Let's do this thing. First up is Star Wars Obi-Wan, A Jedi's Purpose. I love this frame right here. This cover, I believe, is Phil Noto, if I'm not mistaken. So you have young Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ben Kenobi back there, and then, of course, Darth Vader. I love the two sons. Like, one's in front, one's in the back. So maybe it's a little too artsy. I don't know. Here's what the back looks like. This book retails for $15.99 and collects Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi 1 through 5. And this is the series that came out in 2022. So this is all written by Christopher Cantwell, and you had me at Christopher Cantwell, you had me at Old Ben Kenobi. And they're all drawn by different artists. You have Luke Ross doing issue 2, Adriana Mello doing issue 5. And their art style, I think, differs, but a lot of it is brought together sometimes, or maybe it's the sand in Tatooine that's brought together by the colorist, but each one takes place at a different time in Obi-Wan Kenobi's life, and it's him writing a journal. He's writing journal entries talking about his life as a young Padawan himself, and even before then, a young kid in the Jedi Temple, the Jedi Academy, where he has a friend, this young lady right here, Yeren, and how she has fear in her, but he doesn't. And it shows through the issue exactly why she can't make it through the Jedi Academy. We have him just a little bit older when it's him and Qui-Gon Jinn, and they're sent on a mission. He gets blinded for a little bit. We have him as General Kenobi here through, well, I guess that's actually after the Clone Wars right here. Then we have him just a little bit older here, right before Episode 3. And then by the time you get to the 5th issue, you have him living in Tatooine as an older Ben Kenobi and helping out a stormtrooper in need. This was a nice treat. This is actually kind of the stuff that I wanted to see in the Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show that came out or streaming on Disney+. There were aspects of it that I did enjoy, but sometimes I was like, oh man, why waste your time on all these new characters? We have Ewan McGregor and Christian Hayden that back. And we want to see more of that. But anyway, this was a nice treat. All the way in the back are variant covers. There's the photo one right there. And then what other Star Wars books there are. This book has 120 pages and retails for $15.99. Jane Foster and the Mighty Thor. This is a really interesting title. I assume because of the movie, Love and Thunder, that they were trying to do something with Jane Foster and Thor on the title. This collects issues 1 through 4 of Jane Foster and the Mighty Thor, all written by Torunn Grønbekk, who had been writing the Valkyrie stories. So Jane Foster is still Valkyrie during this time. By the way, minor spoilers here, because, well, it is Jane Foster and her time as the Valkyrie and her time as Thor. But I'm not going to go into specifics as how she became Valkyrie and how she was Thor, or how long she was Thor and Valkyrie. But I did want to mention that because you're going to be seeing the pictures through here. So here she is hanging out with Ross Solomon. She was a character from the pages of Jason Aaron's Thor. They're going on a mission with the Avengers. She's trying to figure out who this explosive device, or who's carrying this explosive device is. And then she is summoned somewhere else. So the whole premise of this is pretty much one day Mjolnir shows up at her apartment. And she's like, why are you here? Now, Mjolnir, maybe could be someone else, is talking to her. And I really like that dynamic of this stupid hammer talking to Jane Foster, which we've kind of seen before. They've kind of dabbled a little bit here and there with this particular story between both of those characters. Now, someone else plays an important part, and that is this character right here. This is Valkyrie, who I'm sure some of you are very familiar with from the movies. Well, she did show up in the Marvel Universe. I think it was during the King in Black when she was established as a Valkyrie, if you will, one of the early 9 Valkyries. But her name is Runa. That's what she goes by here. Not to be confused with the character of Jane Foster, who's going as Valkyrie. Now, the whole story is trying to find Thor. Where is Thor? So she's playing both Valkyrie and Thor. And Sim shows up. Hell yes, you know you're in for a good time when Sim comes on board. I don't know why I said that. It's not like Inferno was a good time. I liked Inferno. But anyway, that's the premise of this book, is the journey in trying to find Thor. There's a couple of twists and turns here and there as to who has Thor and why. And some of the decisions that Jane Foster has to make. What this book does for me, though, is gives me hope that this series isn't over. The Valkyrie Jane Foster era is not over. And maybe one day we can get an omnibus edition of it. Because I know there was a... What was it? It was a recalled Valkyrie hardcover. Jane Foster Valkyrie hardcover. And it was never solicited. That's the one thing with the catalog sometimes. They show up and the people at the catalog place accidentally put in the wrong title, and then people get excited. That's why I always remind people to wait until the solicits are out before even trying to make a pre-order, because I hate for anybody to get too excited over a book and then it turns out that it was never made. Looking at you. I can't even bring myself to say the name. The Promethea Immateria collection. Looking at you. Alright, but this is what the artwork looks like. It is all done by Michael Dowling. And in the back, we have some variant covers. These are all by Peach Momoko. Beta Ray Bill and Lady Sif do play a big part in this, by the way. I'm sure you saw it through the pictures. And then the other variant covers. And what else Jane Foster has been in? I think this is the one that came out earlier this year, but it does not contain the King in Black issues. But this one retails for $15.99, and it has 112 pages. Savage Avengers. This is the latest Savage Avengers series. If you're getting the omnibus, this is not collected in that omnibus. This is the new series, the one that came out in 2022. This one's written by David Pepose, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And it is drawn by Carlos Magno. Really like his art style. Espen Grutinger is the color artist. I said it like it's supposed to be pronounced that way. I am so sorry. So the big question here is, will this be in print in 2 years? Since it features Conan. It features Conan heavily. He is throughout the entire book. And now that Titan owns the rights to Conan, what does that mean? Well, I don't know for sure. I don't know if this will be in print, if they can stay in print, if Savage Avengers Omnibus will stay in print, and once it goes out of print, can it be reprinted? Or those what-if issues, if they reprint the Omnis, can the Conan issues still be reprinted in there? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. But if I do, or once I do, I promise I will share it with everybody. Alright, so what is this new Savage Avengers team? What's going on? Well, we have Deathlock, again, a time-traveling cyborg from the future. This time, he's got his eyes, well, I guess his good eye, and his cybernetic eye, set on Conan the Barbarian. He thinks that he is a time anomaly and he wants him to be erased. Step in the rest of this crew. I actually appreciated this because Papose uses characters that I don't think anybody even cared about. I mean, we have characters in here like Weapon H, Cal Cortez. Well, no, I think some people do care about Daredevil these days. You do have Elektra Daredevil in here. You have Cloak and Dagger show up. Black Knight, my favorite Avenger. I love the Black Knight. You have Anti-Venom. This is, well, no, in case you don't know who Anti-Venom is, I'll be vague as possible. Matter of fact, I probably need to hurry up. We got 10 books to look over. But yes, this is the team that comes together because they're all trying to help out Conan, who's getting beat up by Deathstroke. I call him Deathstroke the Terminator? Deathlock. Sorry about that. Apologies. By Deathlock. Now, a time portal opens up, and these Avengers get thrown into the Hyborian Age. And that's where the rest of these issues take place. All 5 issues take place during the Hyborian Age. And it's about trying to help Conan and then trying to help each other because they're all scattered about. And they're all trying to stop Deathlock. And why is Deathlock back? There's a little bit of a twist as to why he's back and actually hunting Conan down. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, but is this the final Marvel Comics issues that feature Conan? Because it feels like the end of this is like, alright, Conan, deuces, man, have fun in your Hyborian Age. I don't know if there's more Conan left in Savage Avengers, but I want to say the end of this feels like it is a goodbye to Conan. But please, correct me if I'm wrong. All the way in the back, we have some variant covers. This is the connecting covers right here by Giuseppe Camuncoli. And 2 variants by Jenny Frison and Rafael Albuquerque. I will say I'm very excited for the next story arc, though, but because at the end of this one, somebody shows up that I'm like, yeah, I can't get enough of those characters. But this collects issues 1 through 5, retails for $15.99, and it has 112 pages. Oh, and this one is printed in America. I keep forgetting to mention that. Some people want to know where these are printed. Obi-Wan Kenobi was in Canada, and these 2 so far are in America. It's the thickness of the glossy paper, I think, is what people were wondering about. Captain Marvel, Volume 8, The Trials. Now, one thing I want to point out is the solicits that I've seen for this one did not have this cover, but this is the actual cover that is coming out. So, continuing Kelly Thompson's run on Captain Marvel, collecting issues 37 through 41 of the series that started in 2019, and this is another one that's printed in America. So, it doesn't have a glossy finish here, and it has thicker glossy paper. Drawn by Julius Ota, Juan Frigger, and Alvaro Lopez, and Carlos Gomez. Now, this is in the aftermath of the previous volume. Something big happened with Carol Danvers and her powers. And at the end of the final volume, or the previous volume, we get this character. And I'm not going to say how that character is able to come back or who she is exactly. Because I really like what they did with the character of Binary. And Carol Danvers, Binary, those were my years reading Carol Danvers. I never really got to read her as Miss Marvel growing up because by the time I was getting into comics, Rogue had sucked her powers out and she was hanging out with the Starjammers. So for me, I have no nostalgia for that. I never really thought that she fit the role of Captain Marvel. It wasn't until Kelly Thompson's run, really, that I was like, okay, I actually digged it. Because my Captain Marvel growing up was Monica Rambeau. And yes, I know comics are all about change, and I think it's just, I'm a creature of habit sometimes, and some of my characters, if it's X-Men related, I'm set in my ways. Anyway, here we are. Binary is now part of the Captain Marvel cast. So we do have Spectrum right there, or is she going as Photon? No, she's Spectrum now. Monica Rambeau, she is also a supporting cast of Captain Marvel. It's good to see both of them together. So this is called The Trials for a reason. The premise of this story is that Carol Danvers disappears. One night out with the girls here. I do like this. I love the fact that Kelly Thompson is using Jennifer right here. This is Hazmat. If you've not read Avengers Academy and Avengers Initiative, do yourself a favor. underrated series that no one talks about. They are amazing and available in complete collections. So Carol Danvers disappears. She's taken somewhere. So to take her place is binary because she's familiar with Carol's powers. Who she is and what secret she holds, it's all in this book. Where's Carol Danvers gone, though? I like this. I like this idea. I mean, it's called the trials. I'm pretty sure most of you can figure out that she is on trial, but who is holding her on trial? Well, those answers are found in here too, and one of the characters I don't quite agree with, but everyone else I'm like, okay, that actually makes sense. But that's what the trials are about, and these covers, my goodness, are hot, hot, hot. All right, so this book has 144 pages, and it retails for $11.99. And all the way in the back are where you're going to find the variant covers. That is adorable with Jeff the Landshark. And this is a take on the Avenging Spider-Man, which had the first appearance of Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel. And then this variant cover right here to annual number 1. Oh, annual number 1! Actually, I could talk about that. As a wonderful reunion with the Starjammers. They're all thrown in a prison, and you can find out why by reading this book, but we gotta keep going. Wolverine by Benjamin Percy, Volume 4. So, continuing the story of Wolverine in the Krakoa era of X-Men. Now, one thing I want to make perfectly clear is that, damn it, I have not read AXE yet, or AXE, or Avengers, X-Men, Eternals. And this spoiled something for me because issues 24 and 25 are in the aftermath of, I believe, issue 3 of AXE. So if you haven't read the AXE, then maybe skip the issues here in the back and stick to just the Deadpool reunion story. All right, just in case, because I don't want it to spoil for anybody. I think it reads better if you had read already the AXE event. So Benjamin Percy is the writer on all of this. Adam Kubert does the story with Deadpool. That's right. The Merc with the Mouth is invading Krakoa. He wants to rejoin X-Force because pretty much his title has been canceled. So he wants to have a tryout period and join his old teams again. However, they're not as accepting of him as he thinks they were going to be. But there is something that he can go and help Wolverine do. By the way, I love this throwback right here with issues of X-Force, New Mutants, and his own ongoing series. And these CGC books that are getting shot up by my dude right there. You know, Percy's ups and downs. No adamantium surfboards here, but ups and downs. So Wolverine is sent on a mission. Apparently there are some robots that are being made in the image of X-Men, and the X-Men want to find out who's making them and why some of the villains have them. Now there is a twist as to who is making them and why they're making them. And with a lot of Benjamin Pearson's writings, I agree with some of the things, some of the villains, or some people that turn villains that he's using. For anyone that has read it, I'm being as vague as possible, but you all know. Because being an X-fan, I just talked about it in that Captain Marvel overview of Volume 8. Sometimes it's hard when they take your babies and you're like, nah, that's not supposed to be that way. That character's acting way out of character. I don't know if I agree 100% if the reasoning makes sense for the character to go bad, but anyway, that's a whole different story. Sometimes these overviews get hard when I want to talk about these things with going into spoilers. But yeah, it's this whole team up between Wolverine and Deadpool. Now, the two last stories, these two are drawn by Federico Vincentini, and it's the return of Solem, who's a character that Wolverine had to fight in the X of Swords. So if you're not familiar with that event, there is a trade paperback and an oversized hardcover of that collection out there. Now, this book has 176 pages, and it retails for $17.99. Let's look in the back here at all the extras, and the extras are, of course, the covers. I love that this is a take on his own cover. Adam Kubert did a cover like this where Deadpool had Wolverine up like that. I said this is 176 pages and retails for $17.99, and this one is printed in Canada. Makes sense, Wolverine, Canadian. All right, that was Wolverine, Volume 4. And it's that time of the episode where I show the spines and remind people to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Ring that bell for notifications. That lets you know when our videos are going live. But let's get back to the overviews. Being the home of collected editions can sometimes be difficult when you want to read something that people are talking about on a monthly basis. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I read something digitally if I want to catch up on a story or in case I cannot wait to read it. I completely forgot about this series. So this is X-Men 92, House of... I believe that's 92 in Roman numerals, but please correct me if I'm wrong. I've been wrong a lot, according to my wife. But this is such a genius idea. I know. Maybe I'm throwing the word genius around nonchalantly, but no. I'm serious. It's genius to me. What this is the X-Men cartoon version of the House and Powers of X era, the Dawn of X era, the Krakoa era of X-Men. How ridiculously awesome is that? By the way, this is written by Steve Fox. Salva Espin is the artist, Israel Silvi is the color artist, and the letter is Joe Sabino. Even the lettering, oh my gosh, what a freaking genius idea. So it's their take on the Krakoan era of X-Men, all the way from the beginning of House and Powers of X. They take us through the X of Swords event. They take us through Inferno, the X-Men Hellfire Gala. It's ridiculous. And they use the characters from the 90s. The characters, not just from the cartoon, but the comic book characters that were big in the 90s. And I thought that was so unique. Even the 5 characters that can bring characters back to life in the Krakoa era are different here because they use different characters from this particular era. Now, one thing I will say is that this is a lot more violent than the cartoon, so this is definitely not for kids. It's actually probably rated teen up. Maybe I'm just speaking like a parent, but... because there is a decapitation here and a couple things I wasn't expecting to find in this book. Because, like I said, when you look at it, it's, oh, well, that's animated version, so it shouldn't be as violent. This is the X of Swords story. So they use 12 characters from Arako to fight the X-Men here, the 12 characters on Krakoa. But this time around, I love the way they're using original art here, too. They use Juggernaut, Eric the Red, War, Pestilence, Famine, Miss Marvel, which she was bad, Sauron. They have a Brood right there, Lady Deathstrike, Arcade, Archon, and Random. So these are your 12 fighters. I love that this is like a video game. And speaking of video game, there are some Easter eggs in here for the 90s video games. But man, this was so fun. If I had a pick of the week, oh, this is hard. There's 10 books, and some of these books are freaking awesome. This was an unexpected surprise for sure. It would be a runner-up. Like, that's so cool. Even the ads and the memos and stuff like that, and the pro stuff, like the letters and things you see in the era of the Krakoa X-Men, you'll see like this in a 90s flair. Love it. All the way in the back, you have some variant covers. If ever there's an omnibus of the Dawn of X era, and I'm sure there will be, just, I don't know when, I hope they include this in there somewhere in the back of an omnibus, or maybe as a companion. It was just that much fun. This book has 120 pages, and it retails for $15.99. Let me know if you've read this, because I really enjoyed it. Next up is Iron Man Epic Collection, The Return of the Ghost. Now, this came out originally, I want to say in 2019, and here it is, actually, right next to the original printing. So this is the original printing, and this is the new printing. The original printing was printed in the US, I believe in Oklahoma. This new printing is printed in Canada. So the new printing retails for $44.99, and it has 472 pages. The old printing, I think it was $39, if I'm not mistaken, $39.99. But the colors are something I noticed. They seem a little bit faded out in the new printing. Maybe I'm just used to the printing here in the original printing. But it's not for the whole thing. Like, you can tell more here with the colors. For example, right there. And vaguely tell right there. Now, this collects Iron Man Crash for the first, well, for I guess the second time since this is a reprint. But also, that's an original Epic graphic novel before Epics. And you also get Iron Man 233 to 244, as well as Marvel Fanfare 22 and 23, and issue number 44. So this collects a lot of classic Iron Man from 1988 to 1989. And in here, this was just state of the art for the time. You know, 1988. This took a year to make right here. The Crash. I mean, this is long before Lawnmower Man. I don't know why I went with Lawnmower Man. There wasn't art out there like this anywhere. And I remember seeing it for the first time and thinking, holy crap, is this how we're going to draw comics in the future? Of course, not really. Although from time to time we do have some computer-generated art in the background, and now we have AI stuff, which is really crazy. But this was an original epic that took a year in the making, and it's collected again in case you missed it. And this right here is mainly David Michelinie with Bob Layton plotting and, of course, assisting on art. You have Jackson Geist drawing a lot of this stuff here. And these follow the Armor Wars story arc. So there's a lot of things that happened in Armor Wars that come and have a little bit of ramifications through these particular stories, such as the return of a particular villain, and then, of course, some newer armor for Iron Man. I was hoping the Silver Centurion would be back here, but it does show up from time to time. You do have characters back like the Grey Gargoyle. You also have the return of Mandarin here. But the artwork is just so freaking awesome. He gets to fight Rhino in that particular issue. You have this issue 237 where Tony is forced to work with the US government to investigate this space lab. And then you have, that's the fight with the Rhino, but that all leads into the return of the Ghost. Who, like I said, I think they released this at the time that Ant-Man and Wasp was coming out, so even though it's a different character on screen, I'm sure that's why they went ahead and released it. And I'm glad they did, because a lot of this stuff has never been collected. And like I mentioned, you get the return of the Mandarin back here. And then you get Tony gets shot by somebody that completely unexpected, that you didn't see coming, and you're like, well, how the heck? And then the doctors are like, oh, he'll never walk again. Yeah, well, that didn't last very long. But you always got Rhodey by his side. And the reason I wanted to stop at this issue was because Barry Windsor Smith supplies the inks to Bob Layton's artwork in this. And you can tell, I mean, this is definitely a Barry Windsor Smith book. Just his inks are so wonderful. There's the stealth armor. I love that freaking armor. So it is back again, and this is the Marvel Fanfare stories with Dr. Octopus, and back in print. So I always like to stress the fact with these reprints of Epic Collections, they don't print as many as new Epic Collections. So anybody that missed out the first time around, I would hate for you to miss out around this time. So just in case, maybe try to pick it up. The first month that it's out. I would hate for this to go out of print and people miss on it. And I'm not trying to drive FOMO, I swear. It's just, I'm being honest. These reprints, they don't have that many of them. So, if you are interested, if you're trying to get a whole Iron Man Epic Collection, then try to pick it up that first month. But that is Iron Man Epic Collection, Volume 14, Return of the Ghost. Star Wars Legends Epic Collection Volume 5, The Rebellion. Well, no, it's actually Star Wars Legends Epic Collection The Rebellion Volume 5. There we go, that's how you would say it. Now, something you're going to notice is that the cover has been changed. It was the Crimson Guard, I believe, that was on the cover. Or maybe that was just a placeholder. But it's Luke Skywalker here by Adam Hughes. I've never read any of these stories. And man, this was so good. And I'll be honest, I got a little bit confused because I was reading this at the same time that I was reading War of the Bounty Hunters. And the timeline, I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. We're in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Because I stopped reading War of the Bounty Hunters to come to this in the middle of reading the Spider-Man Masterwork. And I got my brain just got. See why I need to take 2 weeks off? I mentioned it on my Saturday stream that I'll be taking 2 weeks of doing trades. Sorry, not gonna take a break from the channel. 2 weeks of just doing the trades. So Tuesdays will be other videos, but not trades, and then I'll be back in January. But anyway, yes, this all takes place after the Death Star is blown up. So during this time, Darth Vader does not know that Luke Skywalker is his son. He just knows that he has to find Luke Skywalker, and he has ties to the rebellion and blowing up the Death Star. And that's the first story. That's Star Wars Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which was freaking awesome. Written by Terry Austin, drawn by Chris Sprouse. It collects all 4 issues of that. It also collects Shadow Stalker #1, the Rebel Heist 1 through 4, another great story, a Valentine story, and classic Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, which it felt like I've read that before because it's an Archie Goodwin adaptation of Empire Strikes Back, and we'll look at it together. And then Tag and Bink Are Dead, #2, and material from Star Wars Tales 4 through 6, 15 through 17, and #20. But this one, the very first story, is the one that stole the show for me. It's just the story of Luke and Leia, and eventually their confrontation with Darth Vader. And yes, they make new friends when they're imprisoned here and they get out. Both of these characters, Hin, I believe, is one of them. Both of them help break them out. Now, you know, in Star Wars, whether it's the Marvel Disney comics or the Dark Horse era, these new friends that they make don't really amount to anything because they don't show up in Empire Strikes Back in this case. So odds are they may not make it. But that is the first story right there. And it's awesome. This is the story of Jix right here, which is the Shadow Stalker. It's a confrontation with Darth Vader. And then we go back to the Rebel Heist, where they have to break Han Solo out of prison. You can see why there was some confusion, because when I was reading War of the Bounty Hunter, different timeline, because we are looking at the Marvel Disney era of Star Wars. And then going back to this, I'm like, wait, but he's in Carbonite. Oh, that's right. And oh my gosh. What's up, Leia? I don't need a slave outfit. My goodness. Them curves. Alright. Where the hell was I? Star Wars. Yes. So all these stories take place between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. And some of them are funny. Some of them are really cute and endearing. You start seeing relationships build. And then some of them are badass. This is the Valentine's Day story. I was just talking about cute and endearing. And then this is the Empire Strikes Back adaptation. I want to say that this was already collected in the Marvel Omnis I used to have. And maybe it's a reprint of those. Classic Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. Archie Goodwin is the writer. Okay. Al Williamson and Carlos Garzon. Unlike the prequels, A New Hope, Dark Horse Comics did not produce a new adaptation of Empire Strikes Back. Okay, instead, they reprinted the Marvel's original 1980-81 adaptation, recolored in a more modern style, and slightly edited to merge the original 6 chapters into 2 larger books. Oh, okay, so this is edited. Interesting. Oh, this is the story of Dagobah right here. I love that all these little stories, these are all from Star Wars Tales. This is the hidden, where it's just Yoda hiding out in Dagobah, and the Empire found him, but they were like, nah, never mind, that bot just found some lightning. Ignore it. There's a couple of 2-pagers here. This, I want to say, Carrie Nord, and this is the same kind of style where he's just drawing in pencils and colors that he went on to do Conan with. Love that artwork in Conan. This is what I wanted to point out right here. This is a Scott Lobdell story, but the artwork is done by a young Sean Murphy. And you can see him developing that style that we've known him to do now, like in the Batman White Knight story arc or Tokyo Ghost. But this is Sean Murphy. So there's all kinds of different styles in here. But yeah, by far, that Splinter of the Mind's Eye, that was such an awesome story. This is the Tag and Bink Live story. They're just little jokey characters back there. This is the Hoth story, which is only 2 pages. So there's all these little mini stories all the way in the back from the Star Wars Tales and the different covers of different collections. sketches all back here. The book has 488 pages and retails for $44.99. Some of these sketches are gorgeous. Hey, there's Han. Dude, I was out of the corner of my eye, I thought that was Tongue. I was like, whoa, that's a weird cover. That's Howard Chaykin. Yeah, Howard Chaykin. All right, sorry. Volume 5. Udon Studios doing. That's Alvin Lee. He also does the cover, and he does some of the colors inside of one of the issues. But that is Studio Udon right there. I can tell that from maybe not a mile away anymore because my eyes, they're getting older. Let's go, bub. X-Men Epic Collection. This is Volume 21. X-Cutioner song. One thing I've said on my channel is that as much as I love the Omnis of this era of X-Men, adjectiveless X-Men rather, and Uncanny, the mapping in these Epic Collections are superior to the Omnis. Because this is daydream mapping that I do all day. This is exactly how I would have mapped out the book. I said the same thing about Volume 20. And Curtis from the Epic and Curtis from the Epic Marvel Podcast always reminds me. But yes, it's true. I love the way that they map these out. So this collects Uncanny X-Men 289. I love that cover. To 296. X-Men, adjectiveless X-Men 10 through 16. X-Factor 84 to 86. And X-Force 16 through 18. So what we're looking at here is the tail end of Whilce Portacio's era on Uncanny. As a matter of fact, he's not even plotting this anymore. He is just drawing the issues. It's the return of Hero and, what were they called? The Cyber Samurai, Samurai Cyber, something like that. And they're all after Opal. And this is Bobby taking Opal to meet his parents. And, well, find out that his dad's sort of a bigot. Actually, no, he is a bigot. He's a big bigot. But Opal finds out the hard way because she's Asian and his dad doesn't want anything to do with her, or his son to do anything with her. It's a Jim Lee right there from the Millennium Edition of Wizard Magazine and some other Jim Lee sketches. Another beautiful cover by Whilce Portacio. So many layers on that cover. But this is the return of those cybernetic characters from X-Factor. This is also the beginning of Mikhail Rasputin and what's going on with him and his mind. And also the relationship between Storm and Forge just falling apart. Like, it's so sad. So we get the tail end of Whilce Portacio's era, and then he moves on to Image. Sadly, because I believe it was his sister that was sick, we didn't get Wetworks until about 2 years after Image was already coming out with different comics, because he was the original, one of the original 7. And speaking of original 7 creators, we have Jim Lee. This is his last 2 issues of X-Men. This is also working with Scott Lobdell and Scott Williams doing the inks. My gosh, I could talk about each single issue here, but we gotta go. We got one more book to cover. But also has a backup story of by Scott Lobdell, drawn by Mark Teixeira, with the return of Warhawk right there, who probably some people don't remember, including the editor, Bob Harris at the time. I love that. Because I remember as a kid, I was like, I'm smarter than Bob Harris, editor, and one day editor-in-chief. But this is the final issue. This is Mojo 2, the sequel, who first showed up in the X-Men Annual, #1, adjectiveless X-Men. And it's the return of Longshot, which we've been hinted at for a little bit since the issue #4, I believe. But this is it. This is the goodbye. Oh, gosh, what a show. The final interior artwork of X-Men. Yeah, I'm not including Wildcats X-Men because that's not really in continuity, but Jim Lee's final issue. It was sad to see him go, let me tell you. Tom Rainey taking over for art. This is the Mikhail-Callisto relationship, building with the Morlocks. And we get some Brandon Peterson covers. Art Thibert, never know how to pronounce his name. Never met him. But obviously they were hiring somebody that had that Jim Lee style, and Art Thibert had inked Jim Lee's art. The inks on this are actually supplied, I believe, by Dan Panosian. It's the character of Hazard making his first appearance, who has ties to Wolverine and Professor Xavier. And then over on Uncanny X-Men, we kick off the Brandon Peterson era of Uncanny. Inks by Terry Austin. Love that dude's inks. And it is the beginning of the X-Cutioner song. So, X-Cutioner song was originally supposed to be called Sins of the Father, but because the creators of Jim Lee, Will Spertasio, took off to go form Image Comics, the creators of Fabi Nicieza, and this is really his story, and Scott Lobdell and Peter David were left with, okay, what do we do with this story? And it's pretty much Professor Xavier gets shot by a virus. He is dying. They have to find the cure for this virus. The man behind the gun that pulled the trigger is none other than Cable. But is it really Cable? And what is his relations to Jean Grey and Scott Summers? Who is Strife? All of that will be answered through this book. Maybe. Or maybe you'll walk away with more questions. This is also the beginning of a legacy type of virus. That's where I'll leave it. But, maybe I need to start doing a segment, something like My Life in Comics, because I really could talk about each one of these issues. One of the biggest things I know that people are not upset with, but wondering why it wasn't included in here is the aftermath of X-Cutioner Song, issue 297. What is it? Songs End? That will be in the next one, because this isn't really an X-Cutioner Song collection. I know that's what the title says, but it's really selling on the fact that this is an X-Men collection and they have to include the entire saga in here, so they have to name it X-Cutioner Song. You couldn't call it, the Adventures of Callisto and Mikhail Rasputin in the Morlock tunnels. I don't think that would sell as much. But all the cards are back here. The cards that are, of course, came polybag with the 18 issues. The trade paperback introduction. And then the Marvel Year in Review 92 parody ad right there. This book has 520 pages, but I will also say this is one of the most expensive Epic collections. This one is $49.99. Oof. I think the X-Cutioner Song hardcover I bought years ago, then again it was years ago, was also $49.99. So, man, times are changing. Woo! One more! That's it. Here we have Marvel Masterworks, The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 24. This one makes me so happy to add to the collection. Here are all the covers. This is such a awesome collection. In my top 15 favorite Spider-Man stories, the Sins of the Father story is one of them for sure, and that is collected in here. Written by Tom DeFalco. Roger Stern, of course, helping out with the final issue before he left. Stan Lee coming back to write Spider-Man after 12 years. Bob Layton writing issue 262. That was a fill-in issue. Ron Friends doing most of this. Rick Leonardi stepping in to do a couple of fill-in issues. Bob Layton. Here's all the inkers and finishers, letters, colorists, editors. Man, what a freaking awesome collection. I'm so happy that my Marvel Masterworks viewers are finally getting this. Collecting issues 252 to 262, annual number 18 of Amazing Spider-Man. And it has 376 pages, and it retails for $75. Now, to omnibus collectors, probably wondering, why the hell are you so happy about this? This means a lot. This is a collection that some of these issues have never seen the light of collected editions. We've seen some of these before, like in the Alien costume saga, but it's the first time some of these have ever been collected. So I'm happy to see it finally here. All right, really quick, because we got to wrap this up. I don't want to lose my voice, but we have Spider-Man coming back from Secret Wars, and there's an introduction by Danny Fingeroth, who was the editor at the time on Spider-Man. So the way that Secret Wars worked was Marvel at the time said, all right, we're going to have a 12-issue maxi event. It's going to be 1 year long. Everybody write your character that in a way that has been changed. So for Spider-Man, they were like, all right, we're going to change his costume. But it's not just a new costume. There's going to be an evil presence to this costume. Now, it makes it a little more difficult because unlike Iron Man or unlike Thor, he had 3 titles. He had Spectacular Spider-Man, Marvel Team Up, and Amazing Spider-Man. So all 3 of those editors and writers had to coincide, had to work together to tell one story about him showing up with a brand new costume. So it was a little more difficult than, like I said, characters like Iron Man. But we also have the introduction of the Rose here. So little by little, you get to see that the costume is wearing him out. It's making him tired. It's not just a costume that is just a piece of cloth that you wear. You find out that there might be something sinister with this costume. And the idea behind this was people weren't happy inside of Marvel bullpen with changing of the costume. So the loophole was like, okay, well, the costume will actually appear in Secret Wars issue 8. After that, after 8 months of this costume here in Amazing Spider-Man, we'll go back to the regular costume and everybody will be happy. So yes, the Rose plays an important part in this, and it will become a big villain through the pages of Amazing and Spectacular Spider-Man. He even hires the Puma. Puma makes the first appearance here too. You have the Red Ghost showing up with his gorillas for some reason. There's the cat. He shows up through these pages, and these pages are beautifully restored for the first time, too. So you may have some of these stories already collected in the complete Alien costume saga, but this is the first time that the artwork has been touched upon or restored to its closest colors as they could be. So here's the introduction of Puma, making a cameo here in issue 256, and making a full appearance here. And Mary Jane comes back, because remember, she rejected Peter before. She left Peter. But she comes back in a beautiful story that kind of does a deep dive of her character and why she is the way that she is. This is the return of the Hobgoblin, who Peter kind of guessed wasn't dead. But again, some of my favorite stories. Actually, it's the next issue. And the big deal here is Spider-Man, annual number 18. The plot's by Tom DeFalco, the artwork is by Ron Frenz and Bob Layton and Jackson Guys, but the script, for the first time in 12 years, written by Stan Lee. Now, he was doing the comic strips, but he hadn't written a comic book since, what was that, issue 110 of Amazing Spider-Man, I want to say? And coming back to the character that he helped co-create. And even the art looks a little like Steve Ditko's panel layouts and compositions, but very nice. Then we have the Scorpion right there. And yes, issue 260. This begins the story of the Hobgoblin and kidnapping Harry. And then Harry standing up and learning the legacy of his father and what it means to him. And how, it's not fair that both him and Liz are caught in the middle of this thing because he's just an Osborn. Oh my gosh, it's so good. I talked about it, like I said, in my top 15 favorite Spider-Man stories. Then you have the Marvel Fumetti book, which is the behind the scenes of the bullpen. It's how much fun these guys had. And some creators back here, some of them are no longer with us. And then, of course, the extras all the way in the back. You have the original character design right here. Like I said, the costume debuted in Amazing Spider-Man 252. And then in the story format, of course, it debuted in Secret Wars number 8 right there. Then you have original cover art, corner box artwork. This is the Elliot Brown photo that he's actually taken. He's in the cover right here with the stuntman Scott Leva. And that is the cover to issue 262. And in case reproduction issues arose, the Amazing Spider-Man 262 photo cover, Bob Layton drew a backup cover. Oh, that should have been an awesome variant. I'm sure it would have been by now. Sinister 6 pinup, and then Marvel Tales, which are reprints of those classic issues that we were just talking about. The forward by Jim Salicrup for the saga of the Alien Saga costume that I was just talking about. Oh my gosh, I'm running out of steam. And the biographies here. I mentioned 376 pages. $75, and that, as they say, is that. Whew, I need a break. If you're interested in purchasing any of these books, don't forget to check out our sponsor, CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content and page count of all of these collected editions. Leave your questions and comments down below. As stated on the Saturday Q&A, it's the Saturday live stream we do every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be not covering the next 2 weeks of trade paperbacks, mainly because there's only 3 and then I think 4 trades coming out these next 2 weeks. and because there's so much to read. It's the end of the year, and this is usually when I hold my top 10 favorite collected editions, top 10 reads. I'm putting together a video with a few other YouTubers, so yeah, I will be skipping those, and those will probably be showcased in January, because I do love this segment. I love reading these books or revisiting these books and these stories, and I know so many of you enjoy these. So those aren't going away, they're just taking a break for the next 2 weeks. But I did want to remind people of that in case you don't watch the Saturday live stream. But that's it. Hit that like button on the way out. Check out our Patreon and Spread Shop. Amazing ways to support the channel if you can do so. Thank you, everyone. Stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.